Welcome to the Restoration Pros Unplugged podcast. In each episode, we're going to bring you insightful interviews and discussions with top restoration industry leaders. We're also going to delve into their business, the strategies that made them successful, and most importantly, the valuable lessons they learned along the way. I'm your host, Clinton James. I'm also the Chief Marketing Officer at Water Restoration Marketing. We're a digital marketing agency dedicated to helping restoration companies nationwide secure more high-value water jobs. Now, this show, it aims to provide you with the knowledge and tools you need to excel in the restoration industry. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. And welcome back, folks, to another episode of the Restoration Pros Unplugged podcast. As always, I'm your host, Clinton James from Water Restoration Marketing. Today, I'm joined by not just a client, but a real pioneer in terms of technology in the restoration space. So I want to introduce the owner of WTR Restoration, which is based out of New Braunfels, Texas, which is my former stomping grounds. I'm a San Antonio native. He's also the creator of a new educational platform called Dr. Moisture. So we're going to talk a lot about that stuff. But before we do, Ben, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so Ben Jernigan, he's been with me since earlier this year as a client, and he is doing some really cool stuff, not just with his restoration business, but also with this new educational initiative. But before we dive into that, Ben, why don't you give the audience a little background on yourself and how you got into the restoration space?
For sure. So I came in backwards into the industry, unlike most people. 20 years ago, I started out as an adjuster, actually training with Xactimate. And then my dad had a training company, and we used to train adjusters, licensing. And then I got into adjusting for carriers. I was a lead adjuster for Citizens of Florida. And then I ended up becoming a public adjuster and started doing large commercial losses, worked for Adjusters International starting like 2011. And a couple of years ago, I decided a buddy of mine wanted to start a business. I said, well, let's start a restoration company. So that's how I got into the industry. It's kind of backwards. So I do all the insurance side of it. The restoration side, we learned. But yeah, so we've been in business for about 3 years.
Okay.
But I've been in the industry for over 20.
Awesome. You've worked some pretty big natural disasters, right? So for example, in Texas, it happens all the time. Houston, you were part of Tropical Storm Allison. Now, were you working that as an adjuster?
The Tropical Storm Allison, I was 18. Yeah, that was a long time ago. Yeah, so no, we were doing rebuilds for houses, like volunteer work.
Okay.
My first storm was Hurricane Ike, I believe, Hurricane Ike. And then I worked in Mexico for over 2 years. Hurricane Odile, I worked in Puerto Rico for a year and a half, or Hurricane Maria, I think it was. But yeah, I've worked all the major hurricanes, and now I'll just stay local.
I was going to say a true road warrior, moving from state to state, and in your case, from country to country, right?
Yeah.
We're working these opportunities. Tell the audience a little bit about WTR Restoration. What services do you offer, and what does your service area look like?
Cool. So WTR is exactly what it is, water. So we actually don't do fire and smoke. We don't do a lot of things that a lot of other restoration companies do. So all we do is water damage, specifically water damage and mold. We cover about 45 miles. I'll go all the way to Austin to San Antonio.
Okay.
But, try to stay somewhat local because that can get busy. And so we only do water damage, and we've become very successful at it.
Now, most of the restoration companies that my agency works with, they do the big three, right? So water, fire and smoke, and mold. But you've chosen just to kind of live in that water sphere. What about your experience as a public adjuster influenced your decision to strictly focus on the water component of restoration?
I think on the fire and smoke, there's too many variables. There's a lot of labor hours that are used, right, for it. And I looked at profit margins. And plus, I'd rather be really, really good at one thing, master one thing, before I moved on to something else. And fire and smoke, it's one of those things. I've done enough fire claims that in my wheelhouse of what I know how to do and what I'm really good at, we just decided not to do that.
I like that. No need to be all things to all people, especially when you're a subject matter expert in one thing, like you are for water mitigation, right?
Right.
Now, does your team just do mitigation, or do you also do contents, rebuild, any part of the other restoration process?
We have done rebuilds. We did like 5,000 square foot elk slides recently, and we try to stick to mitigation only. But what happens is, everybody wants you once you're in their house, they want you to do the rebuild. So it's kind of like one of those catch 22s. But we try to stay to mitigation only and try to just be the emergency room doctor instead of the admitting physician.
I like that analogy. I like that analogy. Especially, we all know the money's in the mitigation, especially when it comes to water. You're going to make great margins on the mitigation. Unfortunately, on the rebuild, while there's plenty of money to be made, smaller margins, much more investment in terms of manpower or labor and materials, right?
Mhm.
And we all know the insurance companies, sometimes can take their sweet time in terms of paying out the claims there. So
Yeah.
it definitely becomes a cash flow issue for a lot of
And
restoration.
and I feel like for me, the biggest reason is that I go from being the emergency room doctor, and I get 5 stars every time I do just a mitigation only, to when I become a rebuild, now they're tired of hearing the, buzzing sound, people walking into the room and eating the Jello, and then all of a sudden I just drop down to 3 star, and it's just kinda like they're over it, the fun is over, the newness of the loss is over, and they're ready to get back to their life, and it just happens.
Man, I hear that time and time again from restoration companies. It's funny, the guy that comes in and does the mitigation work, gets in there, dries, cuts, and runs, he is always looked at as the hero to that property owner, right? Whereas the guy that actually comes in and puts everything back together, they always nitpick and find something wrong with there. So, from an online reputation standpoint, I'm sure it serves you really, really well to be the guy that's just coming in and doing the dry out.
It does.
All right, awesome. Talk a little bit about unexpected hurdles, right? So you were working as an adjuster, so you obviously know the insurance claim process front to back, but there had to be some learning curve for you in terms of actually doing the work, right? Talk a little bit about those challenges.
Yeah, I would say, labor was like the first hurdle, trying to find a couple of guys that I could really trust to come in and we could actually do the work. Going through all the subs, you gotta go through 10 subs to find one good one sometimes. And then bringing guys on and then losing them, that was kind of the biggest hurdle. Um, and then as far as dealing with the insurance companies, I got a different response. A different thing I had to learn was that they audit every little thing, and that you have to have everything documented. And if you don't, they're just gonna mark it out and not pay for it, some of the carriers. And my very first claim actually was like, I thought it was, where it was at, and they dropped it by like 60%. And yeah, and I fought them and I've worked really hard to now that my reports, the same carrier, they just paid for a 10-day dry out.
Okay, so these restoration companies out there that are beating themselves up, Ben used to be an insurance adjuster. He used to be on that, and he still had a learning curve in terms of making sure that his estimates get paid in full.
Oh, yeah, yeah, you have to document everything, and uh, you have to have the right data to give them. When I used to teach adjusters, I used to tell them you have to tell the story, right? And if you tell the story where that person sitting behind the computer knows exactly what you're talking about, that's a lot easier for them just to, to move through it instead of just having a bunch of fluff or whatever you have in there and not having it separated where that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. Now, you mentioned labor as being a challenge, right? Going out, hiring the right people to help you do work, whether that's employees or subcontractors that you're going to work with. Do you still, you used to have a business partner, didn't you?
I did.
Okay. So
Actually,
now
but
you are the solo owner of WTR Restoration. So talk a little bit about the people that you have that you work with, whether they're employees or subcontractors. Who are you relying on to make sure that you can service your community?
so I've got two main guys that work directly for me,
Okay.
and they're both water restoration technicians. And then I have a couple of subs that just depends on the job and what I have, that I can call them at a moment's notice if we have a big, huge job that we can pull in a bunch of labor and we can take care of whoever we need to.
I like the idea of staying lean, right? Not having 5, 10 employees when you don't know if job volume is going to be up or down that given month. It's a lot easier to pull in and out subcontractors on a need to do basis there. Now you're a big technology guy, right? So you're utilizing all of the best technologies, not just in the restoration space, but also in other parts of the business. Talk a little bit about you embracing technology for everything from claims to the equipment that you use on site, to also building out this educational platform.
Yeah. So I love technology. It's like one of those things. I have boxes of all of my old electronics, um, you know how that happens. You get the newest one comes out and you have to upgrade. Um, one of the things when I got in the restoration side was trying to find the right equipment to use because there's 10 different meters. There's all the different infrared. There's all these different things that you have and they all do different functions and they don't work exactly the same. And so I was trying to find something that was efficient for me, but also gave me the output that I needed. Um, and then, of course, I have Matterport, and I use infrared cameras, and I use the ATP test.
Hmm.
So I use ATP test, so that way we can categorize immediately what type of water it is. It doesn't matter whether it's clean water, but that actually gives us how contaminated the area is. And so, yeah, we use all that. Plus, I use AI a little bit um, for all my text messages, emails, anything. Pretty much I use AI throughout the whole day as my assistant. And then, yeah, so and then I've been creating this platform called Dr. Moisture, and
Well, that's
that's
exciting. We're going to get to the Dr. Moisture thing, but let's take a step back and talk a little bit about AI, right? Because AI is a hot topic, not just in technology, but also in the home service space, right? You've really embraced AI, and rather than going out and hiring office staff or an executive assistant, you really utilize AI for all of your correspondence, whether it's to owners, to insurance adjusters that you're working with, project managers. Talk a little bit about how you do that on a day-to-day basis.
so yeah, so I use ChatGPT mainly, but I also use Gemini, and Grok has become very helpful. So let's just say, well, I'll give you some examples. So
Please.
one of them is I had a timeline recently that some adjusters. I went through 6 adjusters on one claim, and this was not a big claim. So I don't know why, but I had to do a timeline. So I got all of my emails and I put them into Grok and I asked it to give me a timeline stamp of everything, give me a citation about what that email was talking about and who it went to. And that way I could send that all to the adjuster and say, here's our timeline. This is what we're looking at. Can we, to try to speed up the process.
Sure.
Um, I also created some GPTs for my reports. So I upload the S500 and S520 to it. And I give it AI is one of those things you only get out as much as you put in. So I give it a full detailed, I'll trend or dictate to it all of my notes, right? And then I'll have it and it'll shoot me out my full report that I need for my mitigation report.
How much time would you guess that using tools like a custom GPT saves you during the course of a week?
Ooh, a lot. I mean, I'd have to have 2 or 3 of me to be able to produce the same things.
Okay. So you mentioned your mitigation reports, right? So this is a custom GPT that you've built, you've loaded with. Talk a little bit about how you taught the GPT to create these reports for you.
So it originally came from that very first claim that I had. So I realized at that point that carrier was using AI for their rebuttals to me. And this is a couple of years ago, right? Because I got an 8-page rebuttal back, and I'm like, there's no way some guy sitting in the office writing all this, right? And so I made a GPT called the no sayer, right? So I took everything that any carrier has ever told me no to, and I put it in there. And then I reversed it and I created the justifier, and the justifier would justify every single line item and quote the S500 and why it was in there, right?
Wow.
And so those are the first 2 that I created. And then I took those 2 and I just basically version the one good one where I can actually I can give it the size of a room and what damage it has, and it'll shoot me out an actual estimate using Xactimate numbers.
I love that. So not only is it saving you time, but you would guess that these custom GPTs that you've created are literally increasing your billables. What would you guess? 10, 20, 30%?
Especially out in the field whenever I'm dealing with a cash customer that doesn't have insurance. It's you can kind of swag it,
Sir?
but it's a lot easier for me just to tell it exactly what I'm dealing with and the size of the rooms, and it'll shoot me out a number, and it's been pretty close to what I would do at Xactimate every time.
That's super exciting. It allows you to be super efficient and effective and allows you to have still a small team, but still do a large volume of jobs and be able to stay on the reporting and all the things that you need to do.
Yeah, and especially when you're bidding a job or you're giving a cash price, that way I'm not going back to the office and sitting there and I can give them a number before I ever leave the house.
I love that speed, right? The
Yep.
quicker you can put that estimate in front of the client, the more likely you are to actually turn that on-site visit into a job. So, like,
Percent.
all right, so let's talk a little bit about Dr. Moisture, okay? This is your baby. Tell the audience what was the genesis of this, right? What inspired you to launch Dr. Moisture?
So Dr. Moisture, a lawyer that I used to do some consulting for, he used to call me up and he'd call me Dr. Moisture, right? Because I did all this water damage stuff. So um, I started looking into all the different websites and I went down all the rabbit holes in the restoration industry. And I just felt like there's kind of like a gap there because like there's some videos on YouTube about your infrared cameras or your FLIR moisture meters, whatever, but there's really no like a person that's actually out in the field using them, right? Giving you exactly what it does and giving you reviews. Or for the homeowners, there's a lot of most all restoration websites look exactly the same, but there's not a lot of in-depth detail and you really don't have to have it on your website. But for the homeowners to understand the process
Okay.
and for agents to understand the process. So I started building out this Dr. Moisture website. It's kind of like a multi-tiered thing. So one is for homeowners, right? Or business owners that do have a water loss, and it walks them through their process of how they're going to deal with it, right? And how the process is going to go with any restoration company. Um, but it also, they can type in what type of damage they have and they'll categorize it and they'll also calculate a rough estimate of what it would cost. Because the other side of it is transparency is a big thing of WTR
Sure.
is we try to be super transparent with everything that we do with all of our clients, right? And a lot of times they have no idea how much this is going to cost, right? And they are flabbergasted when they're like, "How much? How much are you charging the insurance?" You know, so well, so I built that so people can kind of go in there and put in what they have and see, so I can kind of have some numbers to what they're looking at.
Okay. And if everybody's wondering, the website address is drmoisture.com, right? Like Dr. drmoisture.com. So please, I
Yeah.
encourage you, there's so many resources available on that website. You originally built it with the target audience being educating homeowners, but you now use it to educate agents. Talk about who actually can use the platform to get value out of it.
Anybody that has anything to do with water damage. Um, so I'm working on the reviews. Uh, it's a process, right? I'm still building out, but and I all the time I come up with new ideas, and I talk to it and see it if add some new ideas in there, and yeah. So agents, I have resources for agents in there because a lot of times agents they know how to take your money, they have no clue about the claims process,
Sure.
right? And I've even had agents meet me on site, and they're like, "Well, why are you doing this?" And it's like, "Well, it's Category 3 water," and so they don't even understand what that is. So it's a resource for people to be able to understand it in basic terms that's easy to digest because it's not like you get the S500. It's like, what? It's like reading another language. It's like you're reading an insurance policy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I'm trying to make it where it's easy to digest and anybody can understand it.
Now, how are you using the website as a resource for WTR, right? Are you using it to educate homeowners that you're working with, or is it still a new project and you haven't really rolled it out to that point yet?
Yeah, it's still a new project. The parts that I want to get that I'm working on right now is to actually have videos built out for my clients. So whenever even before we ever show up on site, I can send them a text with the links, and so that way they can understand the process before I ever get there.
I like that.
Uh,
I like that a lot. I find that the more a homeowner feels educated and involved in the process, the less likely they are to push back in terms of the work that you need to do to get their home back to where it needs to be. All right. So outside of the homeowners, talk a little bit about how you anticipate using it with either other restoration professionals, agents. What do you think makes sense?
so one of the big things is because I have probably 10 different moisture meters,
Hmm.
right? Because I bought all sorts of different ones, and they all do.
Well, you're a GAD guy, right? A new one comes out, it's gotta.
But I use one, right? So like at the end of the day, I use one, and I went through all these processes to try to figure out what worked best for me, right? And not saying that what I'm going to use is going to work best for the next person, but at least give real world experience to those people. And that's one of my things that because I have a lot of different technology that I use within my business.
Are you going to limit it to moisture meters, or are you going to also
No,
include dehues, air movers?
everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So everything.
it'll be a great resource for other restoration professionals to go out before they invest in equipment and see what Dr. Moisture has to say about that piece of
Yeah.
equipment there. Um,
Exactly.
all right. So, what's next for Dr. Moisture, right? What else do you see on the horizon outside of being able to educate homeowners on the process, to be able to educate agents on the process, to be able to inform other restoration companies about reviews on various pieces of equipment or technology that they might use in their business?
So I think the one thing that I've been really working on is the transparency, like I said, right? So nobody has anything out there as far as what we actually charge, right? I have a price list I give all my clients, right? It's in my contract. I have to have a number on there, and I have a 3-page price list that I give them,
Wow.
right?
Now, I'm sure there are restoration company owners right now that are listening to this in their car and are literally clenching their steering wheel, right? Most folks wouldn't give out a traditional price list for restoration services.
Well, so if you're charging the insurance company, you're going to be using Xactimate,
Hmm.
and you can export those line items out, and that's what I have in there. And it's kind of dummied down where it doesn't have all the after hours charges and all the other stuff because you don't need to give them 4,000 line items. They need about 200, and it has the pricing on there. And whatever that price is the same pricing I'm going to use within the software.
How does that level of transparency help you in terms of your business and working with homeowners, property owners?
So I think the biggest thing is that they feel comfortable because I will give them a number, say, hey, this is going to cost about $26,000 in mitigation, and you got about $75,000 rebuild. The very first time I go out there, I don't, because I think once they know that and they can accept it, then they understand and then you explain the process. That helps with making clients happy. And all my clients always say that, I explain it very well to them because I go through some of the detailed stuff that you maybe wouldn't do because I don't like the ambiguity. I don't like, you know, hiding things
Hmm.
right from the client because really the insurance company is the client's insurance, right? And I always run everything through the client and then to the insurance company. I don't do anything directly to the insurance company.
Okay, makes sense. Now, as you scale WTR and you eventually have to replace yourself in terms of the person that's actually answering the phone or going out and selling jobs, how do you plan on training that person to take that same approach?
Interesting. So I actually was talking to a business owner the other day. He's got about 500 employees and he's thinking about retiring,
Okay.
right? And so Tesla recently came to them and wanted to replace him as a CFO with a robot. Uh, but his wife's like, I don't think I want a robot living in my life right now. Um, but no, I think it's one of those things is doing the time and actually training them with all my processes. Plus, by using AI, I have a very specific SOP. I give all my clients a copy of my SOP,
Okay.
like whenever we first start a job. And so it's if everything's done in order, I think there's 128 steps to from a water mitigation job
Wow.
that I do. And so it's just trying to automate some of those.
Well, we all know a restoration job is quite the process there, but to actually sit there and create an SOP, and is that SOP unique for each specific job type, or is it the same SOP that you're executing no matter what the flood source is?
Pretty much. So category 2 and 3, there's just very minimal differences. I mean, it's category 2 or 3, you're not setting fans, right? You're just because you don't want contamination, the whole thing. So it's pretty much the same between 2 and 3 is very little difference. Category 1 is more basic, right? You don't have to do the full PPE and containment and stuff.
Sure.
So yeah, so I have one whether it's category 1, but usually it's always category 2. Once I do the ATP test,
Sure.
they have animals living in the house. It's contaminated. You're not going to drink that water and feel good after you do it.
No, no,
Yeah.
definitely not. All right, so let's talk a little bit because you've got two team members that work really close with you on these projects. Were they technology guys before they started working with WTR?
No, no, they weren't. No.
What has that transition been like? Because I'm guessing, since you are a technology guy, these guys, if they're going to work with you and be part of WTR, they've got to embrace that technology. So talk a little bit about the resistance and how you've been able to overcome that as a leader.
Yeah. So they had to switch to Apple phones. Uh,
Okay, but that's one thing,
But
right?
if I can't text you a PDF, then that's a problem. No, so I think well, really, it's just spending the time with them and explaining it to them. I mean, out in the field, the technology that we use it's still the same process, and if you have an SOP into place, you could pretty much train anybody. You know, if they have the right attitude, I could bring anybody in and teach them pretty quick exactly what my process is and how to do it because it's the same step on every job.
Okay, so that's important to talk about, right? Because ultimately, your goal with WTR is to scale this business, right, to where you're doing 10, $20 million a year in restoration. So these SOPs that you're creating and utilizing the AI technology is going to make it easier for you to scale. Not necessarily hire, because you still got to go out there and find the right people, right? 'Cause you can't replace everybody with AI and robots quite yet, right? But talk a little bit. So everything that you do in the restoration business, do you have an SOP for that?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I do.
All right.
Uh,
And those
I
SOPs are
spent
constantly being updated?
Correct. Yeah, I have one master sheet, and that probably took me about a week because I had to go through every single thing that I did on a job. But yeah, that's constantly being updated. And sometimes, you have curveballs. It's not going to cover everything, you know, but for the most part, it'll cover pretty much majority of what we do out in the field.
How do you think technology like AI is going to impact specifically the restoration industry?
So I do see it. Uh, I don't think it's going to impact it a lot, to be honest.
Okay.
I think that there's going to be, of course, all the stuff that like data input, like all that type of stuff, right? It doesn't have to be done by a human, but out in the field, you can't take that away. There's still going to be a technician. There's still got to be somebody giving that personal touch with the homeowner. We call it our white glove service.
Yeah.
You know, that you're going to give them that, and you have to make them feel good about you're about to rip apart their house.
We have some clients that are experimenting with AI answering agents for emergency calls. Um, I've got kind of a mixed opinion on it. I've listened to some of these models, and unfortunately, you can tell pretty quickly that it's
Yeah,
not a live person talking to you. And I think for that homeowner, that business owner that's standing in 2 inches of water, the minute that they recognize that that's not a live human being on the phone, they're just going to hang up and call the next restoration company.
100%. Like, I had a client recently, he called or after we got through the job, he let me know, he's like, I really appreciate it when I called your company. I got a real person on the phone and they transferred me to you. And he's like, I really appreciated that, and like even our website, like, it's got a live agent that's an actual person, not a chat
It's,
bot.
it's a good looking website. Who put that
Yeah.
together for you?
Some guy, I forget his name. That you guys did.
I think I know the agency. It's Water Restoration Marketing. So you've been with us since earlier this year. Talk a little bit about your experience working with the Water Restoration Marketing team.
Yeah, so I was doing everything myself before, and wearing all 32 hats. I decided to take off like 4 or 5 of those hats and hand them over to you guys. And it's been a really good experience. I got the expectations were lined out, not too big, not too small, and so it's been going good. I'm glad I'm not doing that anymore, and messing around with the Google ads and all that stuff, and letting you guys handle it.
So website, Google Ads, we do it all. Hopefully, we're making the phone ring for you, Ben, and keeping you really busy.
Yep,
So
it has been.
excited to have you as a client, and also excited to see what you're doing on the AI front and Dr. Moisture. So again, if you're listening to this podcast, I encourage you to go check out Ben's site, drmoisture.com. For those of you that are from my hometown, San Antonio and the Great Hills country there, Ben is a local guy. Now, Ben, are you from New Braunfels?
No, I grew up in the armpit of Texas in Beaumont.
Beaumont. Okay, that's right.
Yeah,
Now the
yeah,
conversation.
yeah, Beaumont, Houston, Dallas, and then all over, and then I ended up here.
All right. So, what is next? We already talked about what's next for Dr. Moisture in terms of the features.
Mm,
Let's go back to the restoration company for a minute, right? You are creating these SOPs. You are utilizing AI in your restoration company for two reasons, right? One, to save you time, and two, to make sure that you're making more money on these
mhm.
claims. You've made some good strategic hires, but you've also been able to keep your overhead low by subcontracting a lot of that work out. And it sounds to me like you're really happy about the decision that you made to really focus just on water mitigation for the time being, so that you can become a subject matter expert. Is that helping you from a bottom line standpoint as well?
It has. And, I've talked to several owners here locally, right? They have large restoration companies. And they even tell me, they're like, man, I wish I could go back to the day when it was just me and a couple of guys. And I think about that a lot because it's like, the bigger your business gets, the more employees you have, the more headaches you have, you have to manage all that. And
Trust me, I know I got a team of 25 now. So, yeah. All right. So, what's next for WTR? What do you think are you going to expand your service area? Are you going to hire more technicians? What do you think is the next way for you to scale up the restoration business?
So I've got a couple of uh, people that I'm talking to right now about maybe implementing a lot of my SOPs and stuff into their new restoration companies they're starting.
Oh, okay.
So kind of not franchise, but so yeah, so I'm talking to a couple of people about that have come to me first about it.
Awesome.
And yeah, that's kind of where I'm looking at long term, is trying to help other independent restoration contractors build out scale out their business or be able to get paid faster, without having to go hire and give your money away to all these other companies that offer services like that.
I like that. Building out SOPs, custom GPTs specifically for restoration companies to allow them to save time and make more money. Ben, you are awesome. I love a guy that stays on top of technology, and I love a guy in my home state that's really making it happen for their community. So thank you, Ben, for being a guest on the Restoration Pros Unplugged podcast. For more information on what Ben is doing, I encourage you guys to visit drmoisture.com. So DR like doctor, moisture.com. Thank you guys for sticking around for the interview. If you're looking for more information on how to grow your restoration business, please reach out to our agency, waterrestorationmarketing.com. Ben, thank you as always. I know you guys have been really busy with the flooding that's going on in central Texas right now. I'm glad to hear that your family, your property is safe, but I also want to take a second to send a lot of thoughts and prayers to the families that were impacted by that flooding. Because again, that's where I grew up, man. So that's a place in the country that definitely holds a place in my heart there. So thank you, audience, for joining the Restoration Pros Unplugged podcast today. Please make sure you find us on social, that you like us. And if you so are moved, please leave us a 5-star review on our podcast. It helps us get in front of more audience members. Ben, it's been an absolute pleasure. Ben Jernigan, Water Restoration Marketing, WTR Restoration, and also drmoisture.com. Ben, thanks for jumping on the pod today.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Restoration Pros Unplugged podcast. If you like what you heard today, be sure to subscribe, share, and also leave us a 5-star review. We'll be back with more interviews and discussions with restoration industry leaders really soon. In the meantime, if you're a restoration company looking to add more high-value water jobs, you can reach me and my team at waterrestorationmarketing.net. Again, that's waterrestorationmarketing.net. I look forward to hearing from you soon.